when you call a person blind, um, it's painting with a really broad brush, right?
Right.
That's why things like the term sight loss for a person like me, sight loss is absolutely appropriate.
Right.
Um, but what about a person who's a total, who's never seen? They've never dealt with sight loss. They've
Right.
always been blind. So there's an interesting vocabulary issue going on. But even from the experience, the experiential point of view, if somebody says to me, "Oh, that doesn't match with that," or "That's taller than this," or and they use visual concepts, I get it. While on the other hand, a person who's been totally blind since birth, never seen anything, wouldn't understand.
Right.
Also, I've got skills that I've honed for a lifetime versus a person who might have lost their sight, 10 years ago or 15 years ago or whatever. Plus, I always knew I was going to lose it. I never expected to keep it.
Hello, I am John Brink, and we are podcasting on the brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people watching us from around the world, Canada, yeah, we know where Canada is, okay. And then British Columbia on the west coast, right, right. And then there's a big city in British Columbia, it's called Vancouver. We are 500 miles north of Vancouver, or 800 kilometers, which puts us in the center of British Columbia, north, south, east, west, and we live in harmony with nature. All around us, we have black bears, grizzlies, caribou, deer, foxes, you name it, it's all around us. And so living in harmony with nature, and we love it. So today we have a very, very special guest. His name is Mike Calvo, and Mike is an esteemed public speaker from Cuban origin, passionate advocate of accessibility and empowerment. He is an interesting guest because he is vision impaired, which makes it unique. Did you want to ask a question, Mike?
No, 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 no. My
Okay.
wife is leaving for work.
Oh, okay. So, okay. We'll
Sorry.
see her later. Nice to meet her a little bit here. So, and
Okay.
so he is born in Atlanta, Georgia, and he is also the founder of the Blind Visionary. And Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you for such a wonderful welcome. Glad to be here today.
Now, what makes you unique to me and to my guests, and in all the guests that I've had, that you are visionary impaired. And so share with us what that means, and then that you were you always like that, or so that makes you unique, and you've been extremely, in my opinion, successful in all the things that you do, and we'll talk about that. So share with us, you were born in Atlanta, I believe, and share with us where you were born, and then how it all connects to where you are
Sure.
today.
Basically, I was born in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm the son of Cuban parents. My parents came in the 1960s, after the Cuban Revolution, or basically after Castro took over.
Right.
Um, and we moved through a series of events. We're living in Atlanta when I was born. When they discovered that I was blind, um, they were told, "Hey, you got to go to Michigan because Michigan's where all the best blind schools are." So, being the wonderful, nice but ignorant Cuban parents that they were,
You had a big
or that
family
they
though,
are,
and lots of kids, right?
with just three, there's three of us. I have a big family. I actually have five,
Okay.
myself, and
Right.
and then my wife has two, so I have
Right.
seven, and
Okay.
five of them are girls. So
Oh my
it's
goodness.
karma, man. It's karma. So yeah, God, God or destiny or whatever you want to believe said, "Hey, you like girls? Gosh, here you go, five
Yeah.
of them."
Yeah.
Um,
So I
but
interrupted you a little bit. So
no worries.
your parents decided
So
to go to Michigan.
yeah, so we went to Michigan and we lived in Lansing, Michigan.
Okay.
Um, in Lansing, Michigan, I received my training kind of life skills. When you're blind, and blind is okay. It's funny because right now, in all of this political correctness and DEI world that we live in, which is great, but I think sometimes we all in this for the sake of being way polite and all of that, we overthink things. I'm blind, people. They don't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're not going to work. So
Right.
blind is totally okay. Visually impaired, sightless, whatever. Um, excuse me. But the bottom line is that I got my training in just life skills. When you're a young blind person, they try and get you in to teach you things like how to clean, how to fold clothing, how to put things in a way where you can find them later. Well, I think the funny thing is, usually the wife is the one complaining in a marriage when stuff is out of place because, as guys, we live like bears with furniture. But in my case, it's the other way around. It's like, babe, please, you move the toothpaste and you put it 6 inches, to the left, and I don't know where the hell it is. So yeah, so basically when you go to school and you're very young, they teach you these independent living skills, and that's kind of where I got my training. By the time I was 5, I basically knew how to make my bed. I knew how to fold clothes. I knew how to wash clothes, light cooking, like how to boil water, how to cook eggs, that kind of
Right.
thing. Um, and they, and I was starting to learn Braille and just skills to how to get around, what they call mobility skills, which is
Right.
how to walk around with a cane and
Right.
that kind of thing. And then shortly after I went to the first grade, we moved down to Miami, which
Okay.
is
So up to that point that you were about 5, you were in Lansing,
Michigan.
Michigan, and so that's
Correct.
where you got your initial uh, education or training in a school that focused on blind or visually impaired people first,
That's
right?
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so that taught you some of the basics other than what you already had acquired. And you're the only one in your family that is visually impaired.
I am, and that posed some very interesting scenarios and situations. Because of my Hispanic background, I'm very Cuban. I don't sound it because I spent some time in broadcasting and that kind of thing. And when I was growing up, they wanted broadcasters to sound very non-regional, and non-regional, I guess, sounds like a white guy from the Midwest. So, so so that's basically what I sound like, although I speak fluent Spanish. But anyway, in the Cuban culture, there was and still is a great deal of ignorance in the Latino culture when it comes to what a visually impaired person or blind person is capable of doing. So even to this day, I have 5 kids, and I don't know what I would have done if one of my kids was born blind. And I have every resource available to me that anyone can imagine. First of all, because of where I live, but second of all, because of the industry I'm in. Um, and I can't even imagine the torment that these poor folks, my parents, went through when they found themselves in a new country, new language, new everything, and here's this blind kid.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh my goodness, what are we going to
Now
do?"
what? Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, when they went running to Michigan. I mean, and if you can imagine, I mean, from Cuba to Michigan, man, that's a hell of a jump. I mean, you're talking a lot of cold and
I would
that
say.
kind of thing. Yeah, so it was an interesting I'm sure it was an interesting paradigm shift for them. But we got through it and ended up back in Miami, where I tell people wherever good Cuban goes, because Miami is like
Yeah.
Cuba, pretty much. It's the largest population of of Cubans in the United States,
Exactly.
and we ended up back there in Miami, and I got my, and then I started, I guess my formal education. I mean, I was in second grade by the time I got there, and I was what they call mainstreamed, which means I was part of the day. I was in a special classroom with a teacher that worked with blind kids, so all my stuff was in Braille and all that kind of stuff. And my Braille, I was still young, so my Braille education was continuing, and I was learning the skills of being a blind person. We do things a little differently for placement of things, for how we get around, um all kinds of little tips and tricks that we that
Right.
we pick up along the way.
Right.
But the rest of the day I was in mainstream or regular classes with the kids.
Right.
And I never got bullied. I was always really well accepted. If anything, I was the leader of the pack when I was growing up, which learned to lead a lot of my friends into some very debaucherous things as we grew up in the '80s in Miami. So,
So what I
it was
find,
interesting times.
yeah. So Mike, what comes to mind, I've been thinking about our interview, which is somewhat unique, and then kind of thinking in my mind that you were born blind, I believe, correct?
Mhm.
So
That's correct.
you have never been able to see, which makes it different in some form or fashion to if you were seeing before, and then because of whatever circumstances became visionary or blind impaired, then that would be different from what you are because you were born the way you are now. It is just who you are, and
Well,
have
yeah, yeah,
acquired the
yes and
skill
no.
sets. Okay.
Yeah, yes and no, because
Okay.
I was born. Excuse me. I was born, and I just got over this terrible flu.
Yeah. No. No
Um,
worries.
I I was born with detached retinas, right?
Okay.
And when you have a detached retina, you have what they call light perception and a little bit more. So I was able to see like colors. I was able to see light. I was able to see certain shadows. On a good day, I could see people's faces. Up to about the age of 18, it
Okay.
was never usable vision. I mean, I was
Right.
raised as a blind kid. I
Right.
learned Braille, never read anything. So, for all intents and purposes, but I do understand kind of the concept of what sight is, the concept of what colors are.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, when I was a kid, we didn't have the large amount of colors that we have today. Like, I don't know what space gray is, and I don't know
Right.
what fuchsia is, and I don't know what stainless steel is. You know what I'm saying? I mean, these are concepts of colors that, when I was a kid, I saw black, white, gray, blue, green, red, white. Yeah, but that's about it. I couldn't, the weird colors that we have today. I don't understand them. But be that
Yeah,
as it may,
I'm colorblind, so I don't see him either, and I'm a seeing person.
well, there you go. So,
Yeah.
so to me, I mean, but you're right. I mean, the point of losing one's sight later, and that's something that's really important because
Right.
when you call a person blind, um, it's painting with a really broad brush, right?
Right.
That's why things like the term sight loss, for a person like me, sight loss is absolutely appropriate.
Right.
Um, but what about a person who's a total, who's never seen? They've never dealt with sight loss. They've
Right.
always been blind. So there's an interesting vocabulary issue going on. But even from the experiential point of view, if somebody says to me, "Oh, that doesn't match with that," or "That's taller than this," or and they use visual concepts, I get it. While on the other hand, a person who's been totally blind since birth, never seen anything, wouldn't understand.
Right.
Also, I've got skills that I've honed for a lifetime versus a person who might have lost their sight, 10 years ago or 15 years ago or whatever. Plus, I always knew I was going to lose it. I never expected to keep it.
Right.
So when the lights finally went out, pun totally intended, um it was just like, okay, so it's that part of that chapter of my life is over. It's time now to be, just a regular old blind guy.
Yeah.
And that's what I've done. The blind visionary
Accepting
thing,
what
by
it
the way, is a
is,
joke.
right?
Yeah, blind visionary, the name the blind visionary is actually, a lot of people, oh, how motivational. It's like, no, no, no. That I used to have a group of investors in my previous company, and that's what they used to joke around and call me, the blind visionary, because I
Yeah.
was the CEO of the company, and I was the visionary. So, and I was blind. So, hey, there's the blind visionary.
Yeah.
So it was a great name for the public speaking stuff that I've been doing for the last couple of years. But yeah, that was that. So pretty much, I was raised as a blind guy, but I did have a little bit of sight until about the age of 18.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I was wondering about because I thought, as you already indicated, it would make you different from somebody for all the reasons that you explained to us from if you were blind from birth, so you never had the exposure. So it made you at least visualize in your mind how things would look. Now, the other part is the what I'm always wondering about is that reading, or in your Braille, the how does that work? You can read very quickly or with feeling.
So there's a couple of different ways. I use Braille.
Yeah,
Braille is basically the little dots that you
yeah,
see everywhere, on elevators and whatnot, and
right,
on ATMs and stuff. Or I use my computer, which, it reads to me, it speaks to me.
right.
Or I can use a little device called the Braille display, which is something like this.
Okay.
And if you, I don't know if
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
got
I
it in
can see
focus
it.
here,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
right
yeah.
here, there's little dots,
Right.
and this goes connected to the computer. And as I navigate the computer, the dots come up here.
Okay.
And the reason that you want something like that is so that if you're in a meeting and you're trying to participate, and you don't want your speech to be talking. If I have my computer, it would start talking and blah, 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 speaking really quickly and
Right.
interrupt the meeting. So Braille is that way. I use dictation on my phone because I love dictating things, but I usually write freehand on the computer. So, pretty much just like everybody else communicates these days, Braille is, I'm not as Braille centric as a lot of blind folks are, but that certainly doesn't mean that I don't advocate for its use. I certainly don't think that Braille, the computer, the cell phone is no more a replacement for Braille than they are for a pen and paper. you know um kids still need to learn how to write, because the day the lights turn off, you still need to be able to write notes. And it's the same thing with Braille. Braille is the language that gives us as blind folks literacy.
So the
So
what has
Braille literacy is huge to me.
Right. So what has happened in the last, I'm 84 years old. So I was born in,
Wow.
young, I call it, 84 years young.
Good for
So,
you, man. That's
yeah, I was
awesome.
born in 1940 in Holland, in the Netherlands. And, so, and when I grew up, there were no televisions for all intents and purposes. I still remember as
Mhm.
a kid, the first time there was one television in our little village that we were living in. And so we all went down there, watched television. A lot of snow, because the pictures were not very good. And then from there on in, moving through my growing up and going to school, doing all those kind of things, is the next thing that stands out in my mind is cell phones. They were as big as a shoe or bigger than. And so, but even before that, my grandparents didn't have a telephone. They had a radio, and that was the only technology they had. So as we go through that, then in my life, looking at cell phones, and the next thing that happened in the 70s is computers, starting with Apple, computers and the generations through it. And technology has changed a lot and still is, as we speak. The next thing that will change the world, in my mind, is AI, for one, and all the other things that are happening. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, it has made a huge difference to me as a seeing person, but it also, correct me if I'm wrong, made a huge difference to you doing the things that you are doing, and especially being visually impaired in terms of becoming a CEO of companies, interacting with others, being a presenter or public speaker, and being very successful. And all of that, technology has helped you, assisted you in becoming more successful in the things that other people have, meaning visionary ability, where you can use technology and be as good, if not better than, in a lot of cases, than people that have vision.
Sure. I mean, technology for me, I think for everybody, technology is the great equalizer, right?
Right,
Behind this keyboard on my computer here, I'm an equal.
right.
You and I can compete for the same jobs. We can compete. Now, it's interesting that you bring that up because to me, um, my background is not in technology. I grew up in Miami. Unfortunately, I got into a lot of things I shouldn't get into when I was younger, which caused me to run in gangs and things of that nature, getting involved in the drug business when I was very young, and all kinds of entrepreneurial endeavors that were not good.
Yeah.
And which ultimately, because of I think of a couple of things: the lack of mentorship, in other words, meeting other blind people that were doing things that I could look up to.
Yeah.
Also a lack of, and this one, a lack of understanding, a lack of not so much empathy. Empathy is really the enemy of the blind because you and I come from entirely different backgrounds. We have and while empathy teaches us to put our shoes on the other person's feet, the other person's shoes on our feet. I'm sorry, my shoes would never fit you, because I've been doing this for a minute, and if you lost your sight tomorrow, it would be different than for me. So technology, um, when I first got into the technology industry through a series of events, I thought, yeah, as technology grows, things are going to get better for blind people. And what I'm finding, unfortunately, is yes, my life as an individual is better. I've got AI. Even with AI, I've got a pair of meta glasses that I can look at things and tell it describe this to me or read this document to me, or I can turn on a video feed and my AI can describe a bunch of stuff to me or whatever. Um, the technology for my computer has gotten tremendously strong. I find that the biggest challenge, though, to a visually impaired person is society, is the questions that are people are afraid to ask, and the concern to not offend, the concern, we don't know what we don't know. And it's okay to say I'm ignorant. I don't know. So how does that work? And I invite your audience you know to open up to people with disabilities and ask those questions, because many of us do things that you do, we just do it different. And the bottom line isn't how you do it, it's what you do. It's
Right.
if I'm hired to do accounting, for example, or if I run a company, I do the same thing as any other CEO does. I speak to stockholders, I speak to investors, I speak to the community. I do, all of the different various things that CEOs do, but I use different tools that other people that do what I do might not. So it's just a matter of doing what I do and using the technology. Um, so the technology has really made me a lot more functional, a lot more capable of competing in an open market. But I think that aside from the technology, one of the biggest challenges that we face as a community is the lack of knowledge of what we can do, what we can't do, truly what our limitations are. For you to look at me and say, "Well, I he can't possibly do X because if I lost my sight, I couldn't." That's not a fair representation.
No,
And unfortunately that's what we as humans do. That's not just somebody being mean or anything. It's just,
no, no.
we empathize.
Yeah.
We try and relate. And that sometimes gets us into a pickle with other people. But you're right. The technology is and continues to be amazing. I am so excited even about things like autonomous vehicles. I can't tell you how much freedom just Uber with a human driver has
Right.
brought me
Yeah.
as a blind person. When you look at things like Waymo and all of these different autonomous car services that are available, that's just an amazing future that we're looking at.
Now, the other part, Mike, that makes you unique is being visually impaired, being on a podcast with me, you are being in Miami, Florida, and me being in central British Columbia on the other side of the continent of North America. And so we are interacting together on a podcast. And I'm excited about that because podcasting is only on its infancy. It is exploding around the world where we already know that millions of people will potentially watch us having a dialogue between the uniqueness of you, not only as an individual, but as being visually impaired, having an interaction with this guy here in Canada and on the other side of the continent. Now, the other part about it is that, and here come my questions to having people understand things, is that, okay, I'm going to do a podcast. I've done a lot of podcasting. We have about 700,000 subscribers on YouTube. I'm not bragging now, but simply for the
Wow.
purposes of
Awesome.
getting a picture of it, is that I
Sure.
know already that people will be watching us around the world. That to me is important because of precisely what you said earlier, is that a lot of people have questions, but they are reluctant to ask them, and that is unfortunate, but hopefully this will help a little bit in doing that. So I'm excited about doing the podcast with you. And then the first thing that comes to mind, I looked at your bio. I see your picture where you're standing as a presenter, you're a public speaker, and I said, interesting individual. So I wonder how this one will go, this podcasting. I wonder also, then I look at your bio. Now I already know you're a good presenter, obviously, and then very, very interesting background. I know all of that from your bio. But what I'm in particular interested in is meeting you visually. I can see you sitting there with your mustache and looking at me and wondering what does he look like. Now you cannot see me, and at the same time I wonder if he's checked out this guy that's going to podcast him today, or what do you know about me getting ready for this podcast, or how do you prepare for it? Because I'm excited about podcasting you. I know all these people are going to watch us from around the world. I think what you are doing, being active in podcasting and public speaking, is saying that being visually impaired is not a liability. It can, in fact, be an asset, and there's no lesser than, and technology, as you just already indicated, can make you successful equally to anybody else or even better than. So, how do you prepare for something like this? And then, especially you're so unique with the story that you have, and knowing that people from around the world will be watching you, not only people that have similar or being visually impaired, but also other people that have challenges and wanting to share it with the world and with others that have challenges like them. So one of my questions is, how do you prepare for a podcast like this or for presentations that you do as you get ready for this and saying, well, who is this guy who's going to podcast me today?
Right. It's an interesting question. The way I prepared for yours in particular was, you know, right now we're promoting our speaking stuff and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm getting invited onto a number of podcasts. So what I do before I do a podcast is I go in, I look at the host, I look at your previous programs. I love the On the Brink. It was like, wow, what a great name, the whole On the Brink thing. So I just listened to a couple of your podcasts, listen to your style, got a little bit of an idea of what you do, what your interview style is, and you're just conversational. And for me, I happen to be that person that I can talk to you about anything. Just put a key in my back and tell me what to talk about, and we're gonna do it. And if I don't know something, I love to listen and I love to talk. I love to communicate with people. I think we all have an amazing story to tell, and I loved what I found about you, but I basically just did a Google search, checked out a couple of your previous podcasts, and said, okay, so it's probably going to be very similar to what we're dealing with today, which is just a lot of background and that kind of thing. The visual side, I mean, I love the fact that we can do this. I think the internet has really provided an opportunity for different cultures, different opportunities for mentoring and for teaching and for remote learning. You can one of the challenges that we've had as a blind community is we have great teachers for the visually impaired here, but how do we pass that on to to developing countries, and how can we share those resources without having to get somebody on a plane? And we've been able to do that. And from a technological side, I've been blessed and honored to be a part of a couple of different teams that have developed several technologies for remote training and support and that kind of thing for people that have been used in developing countries. And one of them, actually, I worked with the government, the Canadian government, to develop with GC Canada. Environment Canada is the name of the section I was working with. And we developed some document.
Ooh, froze.
The internet has provided a lot of opportunities for us to communicate, for us to learn from one another, and we're just at the beginning. I mean, the internet's been around for a while, but all of these different ways of communicating are growing so quickly that I'm super excited. And I'm proud of you, sir. Really, thumbs up. You've got my respect. 84 and doing a podcast. Wow, may God give me the ability and the grace to be able to do that when I'm 84. Wow, I'm impressed.
Well, I appreciate that. And I call it 84 years young because it's not the number that counts, it's quality of life that counts, mentally
Amen.
as
That's
well as
true.
physical. So the other part of the
True.
thought which draw my attention with you, because we are the same that way. You are an esteemed public speaker, and so which makes you unique. I like to think of myself that way as well. Is that being a public speaker is feared by a lot of people more than death. It's the fear of public speaking,
Wow.
and I know that from experience. But I was able to get beyond that, and I love to do presenting, and in your case, being a in-demand speaker, what are the topics that what kind of audience you're looking for, and what are usually the topics do you speak about? Are they unique to being visionary challenged, or do they go beyond that, like whatever they may be? Let me mention one more thing, just to throw that into the picture. I'm also ADHD, and I call it a superpower. But I speak on that topic from time to time. But also, I'm in business, not bragging, but just to give you a picture. I have 10 different companies. I'm very, very active. My foundation is attitude, passion, work ethic. I work harder than anybody. I say I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always make my bed. I always think I'm late, and every day to me is a good day. And so
There you go.
and that's what I do. So coming back to my initial question is that becoming a public speaker is challenging even for people that have visionary ability, but to be a presenter, and obviously you are special and unique in that area. So share with us, how did you get to that, and what do you do, and how did you get beyond? Most people, public speaking is a challenge.
Great question. I I grew up in a real well. First of all, I grew up in Miami. So growing up in Miami, you're a bit of a hustler anyway. It just kind of runs with it's the immigrant mentality, man. It's we
You
gotta
have to
we
be.
gotta push, you know. And you got to be a hustler. How many jobs you got,
Yeah.
and so you learn to hustle, and you learn to not be shy. One of the things my one of my best friends in high school used to say is, he would say, Mikey, you say these things that you can't see people's faces, so you don't know, you dare to say these things. It's the audacity of some of the things that you say, and just the inability to see people's facial reaction. So a lot of us stop saying things because we're watching the face of the person that we're talking to. And that has gotten me in trouble, no doubt, in my life, because you can't tell when you're really ticking somebody off, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I grew up in a time where I didn't have mentors. I didn't have a lot of things. I didn't have parental support, not because they didn't want to, but because they didn't know how. And they didn't have the tools, and they didn't have the opportunities that I as a parent today have. So part of my motivation is never wanting to see another blind kid grow up and be accepted. The only place I found acceptance was on the streets in gangs and in drugs and that kind of thing, and in the music industry when I was growing up. Outside of that, I was the freak show, and that was okay, I guess. It didn't really bother me much. I leveraged that as much as I could when I was growing up, and it made me really angry for a long time because there's an 85% unemployment rate amongst the visually impaired. And so the reason I can't go out if I lose whatever income I have tomorrow, I can't go get a menial job. I can't go work at a fast food place. I can't go, sweep floors somewhere, and no one will hire me. So I've learned to um, after you get angry, when you get older, and I defer to your wisdom. I do believe that age brings a certain level of more patience and wisdom towards people. One would like to think. And at this point in my life, I've lived a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes. I tell people I bring understanding, I bring clarity to the table, and I bring transparency. The reason that I've been the places I've been, the things I've done, and that I know the things I've done, I know, the things I know is not because I've been so smart, it's because I've been so stupid sometimes. And I'm not afraid to do that. I'm not afraid to own my stuff and to talk about the mistakes. I think that the biggest challenge people have about public speaking is I'll be judged. And if that's what you want to do, hey, be my guest. I'm a screw up like everybody else. And as a member of the human race, I will probably screw up quite a few more times if God gives me the grace to last past 84. So get used to it. My life motto is no excuses. I have every excuse from society and everybody else to do absolutely nothing with my life and sit here and collect a check from the government and just be a be on welfare for a lifetime or whatever. And there's nothing, I mean, listen, if that's what you choose to do because of whatever it is, or because you truly are limited, that's fine. But for me, I have learned to separate excuses from reasons. You know, um, Listen, I will never be able to fly a plane by myself because I'm a blind guy. The eyes don't work. So that's a real good reason for me not to go to pilot school, and try and go get a job at Delta Airlines. However, I can go to school, I can get an education, I can go out and start a company, I can go out and lead people and motivate people. So if I'm not doing that, what's my excuse? Because there certainly isn't any reason for that. You see, so the difference between reasons and excuses to me are really important. And when I speak to the corporates that I do and to the different organizations that I do, the first thing I say is, "Hey, listen, we're going to keep it real here. We're going to talk, and the only stupid question is the one you don't ask." And a lot of the talk I do with people in HR and say, let's get beyond just compliance. Let's get beyond human resource compliance. If you've got a person asking for an accommodation, and they finally reach AR, it's because they're at their wits' end and they don't know who else to talk to. So your job isn't to sit there and fill out a bunch of forms, and it's to listen and to ask the right questions. And even if they seem invasive to you, so how do you get into work every day? How flexible is your schedule? How capable are you of travel? So if we got you into a job that required you to travel, how good are you at travel? How independent are you? That kind of thing. Why do you walk with a dog and not a cane? Or why do you walk with a cane and not a dog? There are many questions that people are afraid to ask, and it's just because, again, because of empathy, they think that, hey, if I were in this situation, this might be embarrassing for me, or whatever. I've just chosen to not be angry anymore. I want to be a solution. And I think I've got something to bring to the table. Um, I'm not a great speaker in my own view. I'm a person that just is passionate about life. I'm passionate about, if we have a creator that gave us the ability to dream, then with given enough time and resources, and that vision from that creator, then we're going to be able to do it. It would be a terrible creator that would give us the ability to dream and never do. So for me, it's dream it and do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense because basically what you're saying, Mike, and what I'm hearing you say is that limitations to being visionary is not limiting you to becoming successful, as many other people are not only being visionary, but they have decided because of whatever is in their mindset. May they be thinking, I'm not bright enough, I'm not this, that. You have to have a can do attitude. Can't do, if
Absolutely.
you decide it can't be done, whatever that may be, that limits you from being successful, that's what exactly what will happen. If you decide, as you did, that this will not limit you from becoming whatever you want to be, other than not the obvious, obviously, the example was flying an airplane, then but everything else is possible, and then it becomes a question of attitude, and that's why, to me, my foundation is attitude, passion, whatever you do, give it 125%, then, and work ethic. Everything is possible. Now, the other part that I find exciting about what you are doing is that, and also doing presentations and being in demand, what I have found, and I've liked that over the quite numerous years that I've been doing it, is that podcasting to me is very exciting, looking forward, and in particular seeing people like yourself sharing with the world and all the other people that are challenged, not only visionary, but also in other areas, that you become an inspiration to them. And I would hope, if I look at it, as I said earlier, not bragging about it, but it is just at the beginning, this podcasting, and that millions of people around the world will be watching by our discussion and hopefully get inspired by it. And and what you were indicating is that 85% of the people that are visionary challenged have no job or are not actively involved in the workplace is unfortunate, but it does not have to be, as you proved, it does not have to be that way, but it always starts with the beginning. You have to become inspired by those that did and say, I can. And can't does
Exactly.
not fit in your mindset, no matter what your challenges are.
It's funny because there is, I tell anybody that I onboard at a company, there's only one way to, I mean, obviously there's a few ways, but the main way to get fired here is to tell me you can't. I don't know how. I can't, I don't know if I can do that. I'm challenged by that. That makes me afraid. Whatever. I mean, obviously, if I'm asking someone to do something ethical, I can't means you fail from the get-go.
Yeah,
Failure is not to not try. Failure is to not do.
exactly.
And so if I ask you, if I hired you, if I took the time to interview you, if I poured my time as a leader and a manager and to mentor you and to lead you through a job, then obviously I know what I'm putting on your plate if I'm a good leader. So if I ask you to go do something, damn it, go do it.
Exactly.
And if you fail, if it doesn't work out, that's cool. But if you tell me sitting on your butt, I can't, get out of here. Go get your stuff and get out. I don't want you.
So,
Because it's there's no room for that.
exactly. So the other question, sorry about that. The other question, Mike, is that, have you, are you an author? Have you written a book?
I am, I'm always working on that book that anybody in leadership is working on. But I did write one book called "Cloudy with a Chance of Profit,"
Okay.
and it's an ebook. It's available on Amazon. It's just a
Okay.
book that talks about cloud computing, and it was written back in 2010. And it just talks about, it's a middle manager's kind of point of view about what the cloud is, what the benefits are going to be going forward. And I nailed it, man. I was really proud of myself on that one. I nailed it. It was really good. It's a little short book. It's like 32 pages, and But it was really cool because it explained. It's kind of like the layman's book to the cloud, and what the cloud really is. And today, we hear the cloud left and right. But in 2010, when that book came out, people are like, "What is that cloud thing you're talking about?" And I've been doing the cloud since 2002. So I mean, um, I would love to my book's title. And I do have the book, I have the outline, I've got a few chapters written. It's just like, where do you jump off? Where do you stop? Is called lack of sight doesn't mean lack of vision,
Exactly.
and that's the book, that perpetual life work book that I don't know, my ego says, There's still more to learn, there's still more to do. You're still not in that place where you can tell anybody, hey, do as I do. you know um uh I have a great deal of respect for people who can do that. I'm just a traveler, man. I'm still learning. I learn every day. When I was in my 20s, I swore I knew it all, and when I got into my 30s, I started to suspect that I didn't know as much as I thought I did. When I got into my 40s, I realized I don't know a damn thing. I'm here to learn. Having five children, and having been through three marriages and life challenges really teaches you. And then when you get to 50, it's like, okay, I'm going to stop taking myself so damn seriously, and I'm going to listen, and I'm going to learn, and I'm going to share. And I'm so excited about what life holds going ahead, that I'm not afraid anymore. I don't care what people think about me. I'm judgment proof. It's like, hey, whatever you want to think, man, whatever works for you. But if you ask me a question, I'm going to give you my God's honest, heartfelt answer.
The reason that I asked you about the book, because I think you have the story, there is no question in my mind about that. And then the other part is sharing with you my background is that for years, people said to me, "Hey, John, you have to write a book. You had such an interesting life, blah, blah, blah." So for 20 years, I started, I stopped, I started, I stopped. And then when I was already in my mid 70s, I said, if I don't do it now, it will never happen. So it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. The title of the book is Against All Odds, and it's about, I'm showing our guest a copy of the outline of the book. It's also on audio. And basically, and since the time I've written another four books, one about ADHD, another one Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream, and the other one about living young, dying old. And if you saw a copy of that book, you would see me on there flexing, because I'm also the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. And so everything can be done. But inspiration to you with your story is that, especially, it's so important for people, not only the people that we know with visionary challenges, but also with all the other challenges they may have, and say I can't, to make it I can. And that's why podcasting is so important. That's why it is important for you to be active on podcasting, sharing with millions of people around the world that I believe will get an inspiration from you. And
Thank you. I'm excited because, like I said earlier, I didn't have this when I was younger. And the cool thing is that when you and I are no longer here, on this planet, this stuff will be here. You
exactly.
know what I'm saying? In its full glory. So what we're doing here can resonate for decades to come. And I hope it does. I hope that we can make a difference. I hope that we can change, social attitudes and people's thinking towards people with disabilities. And I think that you're right. Podcasting is that way for, before, when I first started doing broadcasting and stuff earlier, you needed all this stuff. Now all you need to, I mean, I'm talking to you on my phone today.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow, imagine that.
Yeah.
So
And the
this is very cool.
And the other part that I noticed, Mike, to give you encouragement is because you have qualities that I have, I believe, is that I'm a good storyteller. And that's what my books are all about. That's what I do when I do presentations. And that's why I'm successful in the books that I do, but also in the presentations that I do, is that
Yeah.
they will never forget me after I make the presentation because, again, the foundation is attitude, passion, work ethic.
Agreed. I think that, and I think that if we can, parables or analogies or whatever you want to call them, is try and make ourselves relatable.
Exactly.
When we share our stories, be transparent.
Exactly.
um we've been given a gift, the gift of being able to share and articulate our vision and articulate the dreams and the secrets that we hold in our hearts, and as unique as we all are, we're all kind of the same in
Exactly.
that we all have a secret passion, we all have a dream, we all have a goal. The problem is that life and circumstances have done a lot to stymie that, to hold that back. The opinions of others, the opinions of our parents, the lack of education, lack of resources, lack of, if there's one thing I've learned, and I've trained over 500 blind people in my life. And if there's one thing I've learned about blind people, and I think this holds true with people, but blind people in particular, I've never trained two blind people the same way because every blind person I've ever trained is different.
Sure.
Because some of us have spatial awareness, some of us don't. Some of us can look straight at a camera, some of us can't. Some of us like to move when we're talking, and some of us
Exactly.
don't. You
Exactly.
know, so there's a lot of different things that some of us have a great deal of self confidence, and we're perfectly capable of articulating what we think and what we say. Others of us, not so much.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, it is an opportunity for a storyteller or for a person like yourself or me or others that do what we do, to really bring people to that place of understanding. Wow, I'm a nobody, man. I'm a dropout of high school. I have no formal education whatsoever, but I'm here.
Exactly.
What's the difference between you and me, listener? What's the difference? Nothing,
Exactly. Exactly.
except for I did something. So now
E-
it's your turn.
Exactly. Mike, it was an amazing podcast and sharing your world with
John,
us and the
thank you.
people from around the world. And the podcast will come out this afternoon. And I really enjoyed it, and it was a privilege. Let's make sure we stay in touch. And if you have
For
an
sure, for
opportunity,
sure.
listen to my audio on my different books that I did.
I
And
will
then
definitely do that. I will definitely do that. I like it. I like
and
it. I
then
will look for
stay
you on
involved
Audible.
with podcasting and stay involved in writing your book as you go forward and share with the people around the world that have challenges to be an inspiration to them.
Thank you very much. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to be here. I look forward to the release of the podcast. And if anybody wants to check out what I'm doing, they can visit mikecalvo.com, uh, and read all about what I do, and that kind of thing. And if I can answer any questions or whatever, there's a contact form right there. Feel free to reach out with any kind of question. Doesn't matter.
And for all those people watching us, both Mike and myself, go to our podcast, subscribe to our podcast, because it will encourage us to move forward and do more of these podcasts, or give us ideas about what you like, or other ones, and then share it with others, and subscribe first and foremost. Mike, it was a privilege, and I wish you success. Let's stay in touch.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.